All right, Toon Army, let's talk about what's happening at Newcastle United because, as we all know, this club is the best in the world. But right now, things are looking a bit rough for Eddie Howe's side. We're stuttering in the league, out of the FA Cup after that disappointing loss to Brighton, and injuries are stacking up. The Carabao Cup final is around the corner and the squad is, well, in desperate need of some good news. The injury situation at Newcastle has been brutal. We saw Alexander Isak taken off against Brighton with what Howe described as tightness, and that alone is worrying. Then we have Lewis Hall needing to see a specialist for an ankle problem, Kieran Trippier feeling discomfort in his back, and Tino Livramento struggling with cramps. On top of all that, Anthony Gordon won't be available for Wembley after his red card. It's safe to say that we're not exactly heading into the final in the best shape, but wait, there's a glimmer of hope. Sven Botman, our defensive rock, is close to making his return. The Dutchman has been sidelined with a knee issue, though thankfully it's not the same injury that kept him out for months last season. He was back in training before the Brighton match, but didn't make the squad, meaning Howe and his staff are being extra cautious with his recovery. That said, there's a strong belief he'll be fit in time for either our next game or the final itself. And let's be real, having Botman back would be a game changer for Newcastle. Fabian Schär and Dan Burn have been solid for us, no doubt. About that. But against fast attackers, we've struggled. Yankuba Minte exposed that weakness, and with Liverpool up next at Wembley, the last thing we need is to give their attack any extra advantage. Botman brings something different. He's composed, quick, and can deal with the pacey forwards Liverpool will throw at us. Looking back at the semi-final against Arsenal, that was probably the last time Newcastle looked truly in control, and guess what? Botman was at the heart of that defensive performance. His presence is massive, not just because of his ability to defend, but because of the confidence he brings to the team. Schär plays better next to him, and so does Trippier. Even Bruno Guimaraes benefits from knowing there's a rock-solid defender behind him. So while things look bad right now, the potential return of Botman is a much-needed boost. The squad is desperate to have him back, and so are the fans. If he makes it in time for the final, it could be the difference between lifting that trophy or coming up short again. That's all for part 1, but we've got more to cover. Want to hear about what Ian Wright had to say about Livramento and Newcastle's FA Cup exit? Stick around and let's dive into it next. Alright, Toon Army, let's dive into the second part of this discussion. The FA Cup exit against Brighton was a tough one to take, and it wasn't just the result that stung. It was the way we lost. A last-minute goal, questionable defending, and some harsh words from pundits after the match. One name that's been singled out in all of this? Tino Livramento. Now, let's get one thing straight. Livramento has been a bright spark for Newcastle this season. He's young, talented, and has stepped up big time when we needed him. But against Brighton, in that crucial moment, he got caught out, and Ian Wright didn't hold back in his criticism. Wright pointed out Livramento's positioning in the build-up to Danny Welbeck's late winner. Instead of stepping up and keeping the defensive line tight, he was a yard or two behind Matt Targett, which kept Welbeck onside, and that mistake cost us. Wright called it unacceptable at this level, saying that even with tired legs, Livramento should have been switched on. Enough to step up and stop that goal from happening. And honestly, he's not wrong. These are the margins that define seasons. We saw Fabian Schär's last gasp goal ruled out by VAR just minutes earlier, and then we go up the other end and concede in stoppage time. That's football, but it's also frustrating, because Newcastle had done the hard work. We took the lead through Isak's penalty, we battled hard, and we were seconds away from taking it to extra time. One lapse in concentration, and it was all over. Roy Keane also had something to say, not just about Livramento, but about the entire Newcastle squad. He was critical of Martin Dubravka's decision-making before the goal, saying the keeper tried to be too clever instead of clearing the danger, and he also called out Newcastle's substitutes, saying they didn't make enough of an impact. And that's a fair point. When you compare Newcastle's bench to Brighton's, you could see the difference in mentality. Brighton brought on Danny Welbeck, a player who's won this trophy twice before, and he came on with energy, experience, and made things happen. Meanwhile, our substitutes looked like they were struggling to get into the game. This is where Newcastle need to improve. We know our starting XE can go toe-to-toe with the best, but in games like this, where fatigue sets in, where the margins are tight, we need our squad players to step up. We've got a Carabao Cup final on the horizon, and we can't afford to make these same mistakes at Wembley. Livramento is a top talent, and he will learn from this. Every young defender makes mistakes. It's how they bounce back that matters. But for Newcastle, this FA Cup exit needs to be a wake-up call. We're better than this, and we've got to prove it in the games ahead. That's all for today, folks. Keep the faith and let's hope for better days ahead. Up the tune.